Hey guys, men's dating coach HarryWilmington here, founder of IntrovertDatingSuccess.com. And on today's show, we're going to talk about why it's very, very important to stop complaining about your dating life and start improving yourself instead. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of when I post up new videos. So, I was on Reddit today and I saw a posting from a guy that I thought would be really inspiring for you. And it was him talking about a friend of his from college who back in the day didn't really have a lot of self-esteem about himself. And so what happened is 12 years later, he happened to find this guy on Facebook. They realized they lived in the same town. They met up together. And when he met up with his former friend, the improvement in this guy's life from how he looked to how he carried himself had changed dramatically. And also his success with women had also changed. And so he asked his friend what things had happened in those 12 years. And I thought that the things that this guy did in order to get himself to a better place to where he felt better about himself, to where he was able to change his ideas about some of the things he was insecure about, really speaks to the power of your mindset and how your mindset greatly affects your ability to be successful with women. So I want to read to you what this guy wrote, and I'll put down, if you go to my YouTube page, you can click on the link where this whole story is. It's fascinating, but I want you to check it out, okay? By the way, guys, if you go to my website, we have some great freebies there. I just created one now. A lot of you guys have been asking about, hey, Harry, if we want to do online dating or we want to meet women or whatever, where are we supposed to take them during a pandemic? What kind of dates are we supposed to set up for them? So I've created a free PDF that'll help you guys figure out 10 different date ideas you can do tonight that will impress women that you're meeting for the first time, whether it's on dating apps or whatever, as you're trying to date during this time and period. And it also are dates that work in general, whether we're in a pandemic or not. So check that out at the website, okay? IntrovertDatingSuccess.com. So I'm gonna go ahead and read over parts of this guy's story, and I'm gonna also stop and interrupt and explain my viewpoint. The story starts, he said, it was worth sharing an impressive story about a guy I've known since college. His name is Steve, which is a pseudonym for now. He says, ever since I first met Steve, he had terrible luck with women and a generally negative demeanor. He was insecure about his height. For context, he's around 5'6". He had bad skin and, quote, a face only a mother could love. His words, not mine. He hated himself, and it was obvious to many around him. He was a lovely guy, but his lack of self-assuredness and insecurities around women made him a bit of a killjoy. Now, how many of you have your own insecurities right now that you're doling over? Like this guy, for example, he said he's 5'6", okay, so he's very, very short. But I know guys that are 5'9", 5'10", that are insecure. I know guys that are 6'7", and 6'8", that think that they're too tall and that they're gonna scare women away. So it really does speak to, we all have our own things whereby we're our own worst critics about that other people either aren't judging us for or are judging us based on the fact that we're projecting out there that we feel insecure about this certain thing. So it's really important to realize that what your brain is telling yourself about certain insecurities, either A, it's not true, or B, if you are willing to tweak those things, then you realize that you have the power to change stuff about yourself that you do not like, if you only pay attention to that instead of the negative stuff where you're downing yourself and being depressed about it. Continuing on, he said, Steve and I shared a couple of classes. We were never best mates, but always got along well. We lost contact after college, and I hadn't really spoken since. Fast forward 12 years later, we are both 32 years old now. Steve sends me an invitation to connect on LinkedIn. After a couple of messages back and forth, it turns out we work quite close to each other, so we agreed to catch up for lunch. When the time came to catch up and I arrived at the cafe, I have to say, I didn't recognize him at first. He looked, spoke, and held himself in such a way that he was a far cry from the shy, downtrodden kid I knew in college. After some initial small talk, I couldn't help but blurt out something that had been on my mind since the moment I saw him. Man, what the heck happened to you since college? He didn't say heck. I'm editing, but he didn't say heck. What happened to you since college? At first, he laughed, then proceeded to provide me with a detailed explanation of how he turned his life around. I can't tell you what he said verbatim, but here were the high-level details of how Steve made his transformation, okay? So here's what Steve did in order to transform himself from that downtrodden, low self-esteem, acne-faced guy to the guy he is today. Steve's transformation. I stopped complaining and started learning. I took stock of all the things I hated about myself and decided to do my very best to fix them. Here's how. So his first one was, I'm short. He says, instead of making myself a miniature bodybuilder, I focused on building a lean, muscular frame and retaining great posture. I'm also conscious to never try and act tough or overbearing, as people will be quick to label me as someone with short man syndrome. So here's his first thing, is that he took what a lot of guys would say is a negative, which is he's a short guy. And we always see that as negative in context to women, because realistically around all the guys, it's kind of like, oh, you're short, whatever, this and that. But we're aware that women are going to be judging us partially on height, and that a lot of women will say things like, I want a guy that's taller than me. I want a guy that's like 6 foot plus or whatever. And that can really get on a guy's self-esteem. But what did this guy do? He said, I'm obviously not going to change my height. I can't do that unless I wear high heels. So what I'm going to do is focus on what I can do, which is being a lean person, because the shorter you are, any kind of weight you pack on is going to look immensely bigger than it would on a guy that's taller. So he knew to keep himself lean, and also to try not to be a tough guy, because realistically, if you're short, you trying to be a tough guy is going to look more like a clown act, and it's not going to work. So he knew how to better carry himself so that way he looked like a more confident person, okay? Second thing, my skin was terrible. I developed a strict daily skincare regimen and still use it to this day. So again, this is a situation where he realized his face wasn't up to par, whether it was, I don't know if he had like acne or he had scars or whatever, but he realized there were things he could do about that. Me back in high school, I also had very, very bad acne. And in fact, my senior picture is horrible because I had like these red bumps on my face that they had to airbrush out so I wouldn't have them. And so what did I do? Rather than be that guy that complains about it and just has acne his whole life, I figured out, I bought some Proactive. I used it for like 3 weeks and my skin cleared up. And then as I researched it more, I realized if I just drank more water and stayed away from sugary drinks, that my face would stay relatively clean. Also, I knew for my face, for example, when I shave with a straight razor, that creates razor bumps. So I found out about this thing called a T-razor that my brother started using, that is an electric razor that would cut close to the skin, but wouldn't dig into it and irritate it enough to where anything would pop out. So just by knowing to do those things, I was able to clear up my skin. But again, this is an example of saw a problem, can either complain about it or find ways to improve it. And almost anything that you're complaining about yourself right now, for the most part, can either be fixed or you can refocus how your outlook on it, so that way you recognize that you either need to just accept it and then also be able to present whatever that flaw you perceive is in the best possible light. Continuing on, he says, I was depressed. I realized my depression was brought on by a few different things, namely that I had no passion for anything. I started experimenting with hobbies until I found something that gives me a sense of purpose. It's cooking, which is great for 3 reasons. 1, no matter how bad my day is, I always have a sense of relief knowing I can go home, unwind, and focus on something I love doing. 2, women love a man who can cook. Very true. And 3, women find it sexy when a man is passionate about something. Now, he has a disclaimer here. He says, I am in no way saying that finding a hobby is an instant cure to depression. As someone who's had his fair share of experiences battling with his own mental state, I realize it's more complicated than that. And that's very true. But understand this, guy. If you are feeling depressed, obviously there can be a whole thing about chemical imbalance, but I find the few times in my life when I've felt depressed about things was because either A, I didn't know what my purpose was, I didn't have a plan of action for anything, or I was focusing so much on my negative traits that I wasn't realizing how many positive traits that I had and that I could actually improve things to be better, okay? So if one of your main things is that you're depressed in part because you can't attract women and they don't find you sexy and they don't want to date you or whatever, understand, guy, most guys feel that way when they're not getting women, but you can do things about that. And the funny part is, the more you focus on having a purpose, having a hobby, focusing on things outside of women, that's typically when women are going to come to you. So like this guy said, he had to find a focus of some kind, which in this case was cooking. You might have a hobby that you think is silly, whether it's, Star Wars collectibles or, watching all the Marvel movies or, bungee jumping or sailboating or making miniature boatings or paintings or whatever, but really dive into those things to give yourself something to look forward to. Because at least I found for me, as I create, I'm a big creator in general. So when I create or when I think about things I want to create, it gives me a focus towards something that I can work on and that allows me to feel like I have a purpose enough to not be in a depressed state. And I'm a generally happy guy all the time anyway, but just definitely having a focus on things and also recognizing things that you can fix will also now give you a focus on ways to better yourself that will inadvertently end up bettering you and hopefully taking you out of that depressed state. And again, if you're a person that's just clinically depressed or whatever, I recommend whatever medicines you got to take, whatever kind of therapy you got to do, definitely do that. But recognize that a portion of depression is not just about chemicals, but also about how you're living your lifestyle and how happy you are with it. Continuing, he says, I had terrible anxiety. I started doing yoga and practicing meditation, which, by the way, has been an awesome way to meet women. That's very true. I will also add that one of the reasons people have anxiety is because they are very attached to the outcome of how something must go. And I found, and I've told you guys time and time again, that as I became indifferent to outcomes and detached to things having to go a certain way, it really took away a lot of the anxiety that I initially had. So consider doing that. Consider looking at the fact that you can't control everything. You can only do the best that you possibly can, and that sometimes that's going to be fine and good enough. But don't try to control how a person's going to react to you, or think that, your anxiety is ridden up in part because you want a woman to say a certain thing to you or react to a certain way when you say something to her, and it may not happen that way. And that's perfectly fine, okay? Continuing on, he said, I hated myself. I learned to accept my situation and realize that no matter how much I disliked my personal circumstances, I was never going to magically transform into a better looking, naturally confident guy. I promised myself that with time and practice, I could learn to respect myself. I can't remember the last time I felt negatively about myself. And I'll be honest, guys, I had that same thing. When I was in high school, I got teased a lot for being a weird kid, for being strange. And not necessarily that I was, but I definitely was. I was thinking at a level that was different from my peers. So that got labeled me as weird. And I carried that with me into my college years, into my early to mid to late 20s, okay? And what I realized was that ultimately I'm going to be who I am. So I had the option of being like, woe is me, I'm who I am, I wish I was different, or being like, you know what? I'm going to accept myself and recognize that there are women out there that will also accept me for as I am. And as I accepted myself more, other people start to accept me more, including the women that I was trying to date. So it all starts with you. Ultimately, it starts with how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself, and you're going to project out into the world how you feel about yourself, whether you want to or not. So if you hate yourself, that's going to carry on in how you posture yourself when you walk, and how you approach people, and how timid you are around women. And they can read that and feel that. They don't want a guy that's going to be hating himself, because women want to be with guys that they like. So if you're hating yourself, you can't think a woman's going to be like, oh, he hates himself, but I like him. That's not really how this works, okay? But when you start to like yourself, you're going to project goodness and positivity out into the world, and women are going to see that and be like, you know what? He seems like a likable guy, and he seems to like himself, which gives me reason to like him too. Continuing on, I surrounded myself with wrong people. I used to hang out around people who were fixated on making me as depressed as they were. At first, I stuck around out of pity, but with time, I've distanced myself, and now I only surround myself with other positive people. Very, very true, guys. Understand that part of you not liking yourself and being depressed could be because the people around you are also in a state of depression. And what will happen sometimes is that in order to keep our friends around us, we will subconsciously subject ourselves to and act like those people to make sure that they don't feel weird by you being different. Because at the point where you start feeling more positive about yourself and you start having less of a negative outlook, if you're around those same people, they're going to look at you like, no, dude, the world's depressing. Why are you saying that it's all great and good? And it may mean that you have to separate yourself from those people and find a different circle of people that are more positive, that have a better outlook, and that are going to be ones that bring about that positivity that you need in order to keep yourself in a positive state of mind and be able to attract women that also want positive guys. Continuing, he said, I have crappy hair. So he sticks to a classic short back and sides haircut and visit the barbers every 3 weeks. So yeah. Again, this guy, he said, you know what, my hair's not the best. And some of you guys that watch my stuff or, are a bit older have started to go bald. And you're like, oh, women aren't going to want me because I'm balding. Woe is me. I got a little bald spot showing up right here, guys. That's why I keep my hair cut short. Because a short look is a look that is easy to maintain. And it looks clean, it looks classic, and women really go for it. So you don't have to necessarily do this. If you decide you want to keep your hair and you want to, despite you going bald in the middle, hey, own it. Be the guy that's like, yeah, I'm balding and I'm a funny guy and I'm confident. What do you make of it? And again, women are going to go on your lead. So for all the women out there that say like, oh, I wouldn't date a balding guy, the reality is a lot of them date balding guys because that is not the most important thing to them. Unless you make it an issue, then it's going to be as important to them as you're making it. Okay? Continuing on, I was deeply afraid of rejection. I dealt with it head on. The first few hurt like hell. The next few hurt a little less. Nowadays, rejection means nothing to me. I guarantee I've been rejected by more women than most guys out there, but in turn, I've also been told, yes, a hell of a lot more than men who let rejection prevent them from making many approaches in the first place. And this is a especially big message for you introverted guys out there because, let's face it, guys, we know we don't like the idea of wasting our time. And so the thought of going up to a woman and possibly getting rejected speaks to the fact that we don't want to do that because it's going to waste our time. Like this guy said, if you never go out there and get rejections, you're never going to eventually get a yes. And so what I tell you guys is that rather than being afraid of rejection, you need to run at it with full speed. You need to set a number in your head that's like, okay, I need to ask out 50 women in order to get at least one date. And then you go out there, whether it's by online dating, whether it's by, going through friends or interacting or going to bars, whatever you got to do, but you want to run into rejection and start feeling those no's. Because me at 39 right now, yes, I just had a birthday a couple weeks ago, at the age I'm at right now, if I go up to a woman and talk to her and she doesn't want to go out with me, I've realized that most women reject you very, very nicely. It's not like they do on TV where it's like, oh, you pig, you're so disgusting. It's just kind of like, oh, that's cool, but I got a boyfriend, or, oh, I'm so busy, or whatever. But those first few times I found it was like, depressing, and it kind of hurt a little bit. But now, if a woman says she doesn't want to go out, my reaction is like, okay. And then I go find somebody else to talk to. Talk to them. They want to go out? Great. They don't? Okay. It just becomes par for the course. So, but you don't get that way unless you actually practice it more. And as you get more no's, it'll become almost like a game where it's like, it doesn't even affect you at all because you're just like, I know there's going to be a yes out there, because once you've experienced enough yeses, you'll start realizing that you won't even care about the no's. All you care about is, I need to get through these no's to get to the yes. And that's where we want to get you, guy. Continuing. I used to love making excuses. I realized that no one wants to hang around somebody who constantly complains. I learned to stick to positive discussions with others, which in turn manifested into positive internal thoughts. I rarely complain about anything anymore. And I found this too. I found as I was starting to get dates early on, people, the easiest way to start a conversation with somebody is to complain about something going on, whether it's, oh, I hate the politics of the world, I hate the way that my ex treated me, yada, yada, yada. And so while it may be an easy way to get into a conversation, it's not really an effective way to attract somebody to you, because all they're going to do is see you as that negative ninny who can't stop complaining about stuff. And not that there's not legit stuff to complain about, but for somebody who's just starting to date, they want to see you as a positive person. They want to see how's this going to be a positive addition to my life. And if all you're doing is being negative and complaining, that's going to steer people away from you. So really start studying your thoughts. Like really take a look at, like, when you're just standing by yourself in your own accord, what are the first kind of thoughts that come to your head? And what you'll find right now is that a lot of those thoughts are probably negative, just because we've been trained to think about negative stuff. And I did this exercise in my mid-20s where I had to start saying, okay, I'm by myself, I'm thinking negative thoughts, I got to start thinking positively and turn the ship around. And it really did have a huge impact, not only on my outlook on the world, but also how women then responded to me. Continuing on, he says, I was terrible at communicating with women. I have developed a strong circle of female friends. I understand what makes them tick. I've learned to appreciate them as human beings, and the empathy I've developed for them has helped me realize that looks are nowhere near as important as I used to believe them to be. Now, I grew up around women myself. My dad died when I was 9, so I had my mom, my aunts, my grandma, and because I was in that environment, the one thing I will say is that I've always been an effective communicator with women. Even when I wasn't able to get them on dates, and I didn't know the attraction side of things, in terms of being able to make them comfortable around me, in terms of being able to have a conversation with them, those things were already there. So once I learned the attraction side, then I was able to combine those things to really be a powerful guy, in a sense that I was able to date women, get into relationships where the women respected me, felt comfortable, and could also be a friend to me while also be passionately attracted to me in the bedroom, okay? And so it's important that you develop that skill. And I think a lot of guys that haven't really been able to date, they're constantly focusing on, well, I just got a date and they're not attracted and I don't know what to do to attract. But it really does start with, like, being able to actually have a conversation with the woman. So my thought process is that if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, at this point, there's no point in trying to develop new friendships with new women. That's not really necessary, because at this point you're trying to attract women to date them. But if you have women that you work with, if you have women that you know for a long time, if you have women that are in your family, it really behooves you to really get into the practice of just having conversations with them about what are the kind of things they like to talk about, or what kind of things bug them about when men approach them, or why is it that they think about things a certain way. Really get into the habit of knowing the mindset of women, and then it'll help you immensely when you start meeting women, because you'll know how to talk to them in a way that they can relate to, that they can feel like you're connecting with them, and that will ultimately attract them. He says, I'm not a naturally funny guy. I learned to be lighthearted and develop a good sense of humor. While I'm still no Ricky Gervais, I know how to enjoy myself and appreciate the humor of others. I've even been told by a number of women that I'm a really funny guy. And for you guys out there that say that you're not funny, you don't have to become a jokester. Here's the secret, guy, okay? Women that are attracted to you will typically laugh at stuff that you're saying because you're making them feel good. And that goes to when you're putting out more positivity into the world, you're making people feel better, and then women are going to naturally just laugh because they're laughing in part because you're making them feel great and they like being in your presence, okay? And so you ain't got to become a huge jokester, but knowing how to say things in a way that could give has a funny accent to it, or has like a funny slant, or can kind of be like a play of words, that's more than enough funny to make a woman burst out laughing if she likes you, okay? Again, you ain't got to become a comedian, but just know the more positive you are, the more they're going to like you, and the more they're going to want to like just because of the joy that you're bringing to them. He said, I have a very average fashion sense. I brought a bunch of neutral colored t-shirts and slim fit blue jeans and stuck to wearing just that. Thankfully, as a man, I can get away with wearing the same outfit every day without anyone questioning me. And that's very true. I found my personal style, like what you're seeing right now. I got this black, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm wearing a black shirt and a button-up thing. But I got this, I did a shopping spree the middle of last summer. I had a friend of mine that was a woman taking me out, and I said, just look around here and see what you think would look good on me. And most of the stuff that she chose was like plain colors and plain jeans. And she was like, just having those plain solid colors is typically good enough. I find, guys, you can go to Target and get a variety of just plain shirts for under like $6 or $7 a piece, and a couple of good pairs of jeans, and then you mix and match that with maybe like an overshirt of some kind, and you're typically good. But that's a standard style that most guys can use. But the point is that this guy realized he doesn't know how to do fashion a whole lot, so he simplified it. He said, okay, let me distill this down to what are the clearest things on me that are going to look really, really good. A good shirt, good pair of pants, great. You ain't got to go all extra designer. If you want to, that's totally fine, but if you can't, that's also fine, because women just like a nice, clean-cut look at the end of the day, for the most part. Then he says, my teeth were terrible. I got myself one of those at-home dental kits, and he helped to fix up the look of his teeth. So these are things, again, this guy took all these things that he had, from his teeth to his height to whatever, and either accented them or accepted them or figured out ways to make them better to where it would no longer be a burdensome thing, thereby allowing him to be more positive, all right? He says, so then the guy says, final thoughts, all the effort Steve put into improving himself has made him an awesome, desirable dude. His impeccable grooming, healthy lifestyle, and positive sense of self are all attributes that make him attractive to women. More attractive than conventionally better-looking men who don't make an effort. And that's true. There are guys right now that look better than you, and look better than me, look better than all of us. But because of the way they carry themselves, they are not able to get the same amount of women as a guy who might be maybe a little overweight, maybe doesn't have as much hair, maybe doesn't have the best job in the world, but he is so gung-ho and so positive about his outlook about himself and his life that women by default are drawn to that, okay? It really does make a difference about your mindset. Continuing, it says, if you want to sit around feeling sorry for yourself because you weren't blessed with the chiseled jawline and a muscular frame, then you've already lost. If you choose to make the best of your situation, work on yourself to such a point that your confidence will outshine your predisposed physical self, you're in for a much happier, more fulfilling dating life. In fact, strike that. You're in a much happier, more fulfilling life in general. Also, in case you were wondering, Steve has been in a relationship for the past 18 months with a woman he describes as amazing. They live together, and he plans on proposing to her over the next 12 months. So, for all you guys out there that are 5'5", 5'6", you don't think you have the best fashion sense, you might be a little overweight, you're thinking that your clothes aren't the best or whatever. Once again, a lot of this comes down to mindset. How you feel about yourself is what you're going to project out into the world that indicates to the world, this is how you should also think about me, which is going to lower your chances with women. Versus, this guy made a few improvements and realized the things he couldn't improve, he could just learn to live with and look at it in a more positive light. And now he's got a very attractive woman that he's set to marry or propose to in the next 12 months. This could be you if you would just allow yourself to stop complaining and start improving. Stop worrying about the things that you cannot change. Look at the things that you can, and the things that you can't, don't worry about. The things that you can improve though, improve them. Learn to know how to put your hair together better, or how to make your clothes look the best you possibly can you, or learn to lose a little bit of weight if you feel that necessary. But the point is, stop complaining, because at the end of the day, the world doesn't care. They might have pity for you, but pity does not equal attraction. If you want to attract more women, you first have to look at yourself as a desirable candidate. And in order to do that, you have to make the necessary improvements to get to a place where you are positive about your outlook on life so that women will also want you as well. Thank you for watching this episode of the Introvert Dating Success Show. If you found the info in this episode to be helpful, please show your support by clicking on the tip jar tab, the link of which can be found at the website and in the description below. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment on this episode and catch new episodes every Monday and Thursday right here on YouTube or wherever podcasts can be found. In the meantime, be sure to check out these other episodes so you too can learn to date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.